Hello. Okay. I've said this before. New Facebook Live is weird. Okay. Hi, everybody. I think we're on. So, hi, my name is Kathy Mazak. If you are new to our group, welcome to the group. We're getting close to 14,000 members of the group. So first, I want to just tell you a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today, and give you a little bit of kind of welcome, what the vibe is like in this group, and hopefully give you some things to think about in terms of the relationship between scarcity and fear and your writing practice. Okay, so I'm Kathy Mazak. I'm an academic writing coach and the founder of a company that provides professional development programs for academic women and non-binary people. We serve anyone who has been or is or will be in any moment socialized as a woman. And so when I'm talking to women, that's what I mean. So today we are going to talk about this link that we actually kind of dug into in one of our client retreats between the way that the racist patriarchy of academia conditions us to fear, conditions us to scarcity and fear, and how that plays out in terms of our pipelines, our daily writing practice, and a lot of things that scarcity and fear is not serving us at all. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm also going to give you a little preview of some things we have coming up in the group, and talk a little bit about the group rules, because we always want to be like circling back in a community this big. We always want to be circling back to group rules. So if you are joining live, go ahead and let me know where you're joining from. If you're watching this later, like if you're watching the replay of this and it'll stay up in the group, you can go ahead and comment #team replay, and then I'll know, about how many people, were watching. So here we go. So we had a online client retreat for our Elevate and Amplify programs in the last week of June. And one of the theme of it was, what is your writing worth? So one of the things that I talked about during I did kind of like a keynote kind of thing, and then we had lots of different workshops. We did peer review. It was really cool. It was a 2.5-day online retreat. And what I talked about was, hi, Ashley. What I talked about was, what is your writing worth? And I talked about the wage disparity in academia. So there is very similar, it's like similar to the wage disparity across the board in the US, that women in academia make about 81 cents on the dollar to men. That's the only information we have. We don't have information about, it's very binary, the information we have. And this is like a number that has been pretty much the same for the last 10 years. So even as we've seen women gain traction in passing through the ranks of academia, we still are seeing this wage discrepancy. And there's a bunch of reasons for the wage discrepancy. Like obviously there's the bigger social, cultural reasons. And again, I'm talking about data from the US, but when you dig a little deeper and think really like about the academic reasons, you see that that the reason for this wage disparity, part of it is that more women are contingent faculty than men. More women are in the lower paying tenure track jobs. So like in the humanities versus engineering. So in different universities, sometimes there's a pay gap between fields. And since women tend to be there's more women in the fields with the pay gap, with the lower pay, then that contributes to the pay gap. And we also have at each rank through the kind of traditional path through academia, which, there isn't really one, but through the ranks, we lose women at each point. And this is especially true of BIPOC women. And so we end up with like at the full professor level where where the wages are much higher compared to contingent faculty visiting professors or pre-tenure professors, or even associate professors. At full professor level, we see this dominance of men and white men pretty much at the at the full professor level. So we have built into the structures of academia, we have wage discrepancy, and I will say structures and just call them racist patriarchal structures because that's what they are. Keeping this wage difference and also keeping women and people of color from advancing through ranks where they would get higher pay. So that's the reality of academia. And one of the things that produces, along with other things, is a scarcity mindset. So that is absolutely real and true. And also, when we think about that and we think about the people who haven't, that we end up with this like very white male dominated top of the professorate, right? We start to believe that, those positions aren't for us. And so, and also we believe, and in a way it's true, not just a belief, it's true, that there is a lack of money, right? So and we hear this from our administrators all the time. There's not money for that. No, we can't fund that. We have to cut, raise tuition, cut costs, and this squeezing that is part of fast capitalism, right? So the academia is all hooked up into that. At the same time, we also are conditioned to operate with a mentality of scarcity of time and energy, right? Like, how many times have you said, I don't have time to write, I want to do this thing, but I don't have time, I want to be with my family, but I need to grade and I don't have time to fit it into my workday. We operate every day under a scarcity of time. And this is just ingrained in us from the PhD level. So when we're studying our PhD, there's a lot of messages about how you should basically spend every waking moment working towards the PhD. Rest is frowned upon, overwork, long nights at the lab, staying up late, being at the library, all of those things like that. Basically, you're supposed to live and breathe your doctoral program. Every moment leads us to be conditioned to this scarcity of time mentality. And then, of course, a hook to that is scarcity of energy. So if we're completely overworked and we're not resting and we're making piddly money, we also are pooped out, right? We're just no, we don't have energy to take on new things, right? Because we're just barely making it through the things that we're supposed to do. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to paint the rosy picture of the racist patriarchy that is keeping you and ingraining inside of you that there is a scarcity of time, money, and energy. Now, I am not of the belief that you can think your way into having $1 million or any of those things, or think your way into having more time. But I am going to make the connection between this kind of culture that we're in, that says there's never enough time, there's never enough money, there's never enough energy, and how that plays out for you making individual choices about your writing. So when you operate from this, we can call it a scarcity mindset, or from these, when we operate on these messages of scarcity, right? Not enough, scarce time, scarce money, scarce energy. How a lot of us react to that is that we start making decisions based on fear. So here's how this looks in real life, right? We are on, let's say we're trying to get publications out. And we have a lot of things in our pipeline. We've worked a little bit on some of the things. And then, another project comes along. It's not exactly in our wheelhouse, but it could lead to a publication. So we say yes. And then another project like that comes along, and it's not exactly in our wheelhouse, but we say yes, and we keep saying yes to all these things until our pipeline is so clogged, and we're also we're not publishing things that are in our sweet spot, or we would say inside of my programs that follow your academic mission statement, that support your academic mission. So you end up with this overly clogged pipeline. You're you're trying to divide your time, energy, and attention between lots of projects, and things get stuck. It like gums the works, right? And so if we're always operating out of this place of fear, then it makes sense that we're making those decisions, that scarcity mindset, right? Like there's never enough publications, because that's another thing, right? When you go up for tenure or when you're on the job market, there's no like solid number that's like, this is the number of enough. This is exactly the number of publications that you need. Nobody tells you that. Like, unless you're at a unionized school, maybe. But pretty much nobody says like, that there's like this certain set number. And if you just checked all those that number of publications off your list, you would get tenure. No problem. You don't have to stress. Like that is not how we operate inside of academia, unfortunately. So you end up making these decisions like because you just are like, is it enough? Is it enough? And so you're making these decisions kind of based on the fact that you're afraid that it's not going to be enough. Okay. The same thing when people ask you to be on committees. Like, am I doing enough? Like, are the people going to look at me badly? Are they, like all of these decisions about like not saying no and not putting boundaries about our time come from this scarcity that is ingrained in us from grad school and then turns into fear, right? Fear that we're not going to do enough or be enough. Okay. So the problem with all of that is that it backfires when it comes to our writing practice. So if we're making decisions about our writing based on fear and scarcity, then it can really derail our writing. And I already mentioned one way, right? We take on too many projects, and then like I call it like being a funnel instead of a pipeline. We're like putting tons of projects in the top of the funnel, and then there's this little like maybe a trickle that comes out the bottom, rather than a pipeline, which is like we put 5 projects in, we get 5 projects out. Right. And so we can end up making kind of like these decisions that get us overwhelmed, thinking it's going to give us more publications, but the opposite happens because you're so divided. You actually end up with less publications in the amount of time that you want, in addition, like when you are always like saying yes to things and not drawing boundaries, then it's like you're operating from this fear place instead of from a place of self-confidence. And so what I want to talk about today is like, we need to practice that self-confidence and belief in your voice and belief in your work and belief in your worth to combat all of this cultural noise in academia that comes from racist patriarchal structures. Okay, so when we make decisions about our pipelines that preserve our mission, those are disruptive decisions, because that's not how the culture of academia wants you to operate. The culture of academia wants you to operate from this place of fear, from this place of I just need to publish all the things, I need to run on the treadmill faster because that's the way to be successful, when the real way to be successful, or one way to be successful, or the way that I would like to present, is to actually disrupt that racist patriarchal culture and those structures, like that, to bring down those structures by disrupting them through your own actions, also through other ways. But right now I'm talking about your personal kind of writing actions, right? Disrupting those structures. So that means that what you need to do first, and so to give you kind of like a practical thing to take away from this live video, is one thing you can do is kind of write down, like take a piece of paper, fold it in half on the left side, write down all those scarcity thoughts and all those fear-based thoughts on one side of the paper. And then on the other side of the paper, turn those around into positive thoughts, self-confident thoughts, thoughts that reflect your belief in the worthiness of your work, in the purpose of your voice, in your ability to change your field by making knowledge. Okay? So on one side you have the fear, And on the other side, you have the confidence, right? The self-confidence. And this is that kind of thing I learned from a psychology professor that I was actually conducting a research study. Hi, Georgina. And sat in on her class and was and she was teaching her students, like, how do you change your thinking about things? Like, how do you change those negative messages? They're so ingrained in us. And I'm going to give you a quick, it's not that quick, but a story example. Hello, Marie in Argentina. I'm going to give you a quick example of how that has worked out, like an example for me, and how, like, a very concrete example of how to go from this kind of fear and scarcity thinking to self-confident and worthiness thinking. So my story is that when I graduated from my master's in TESOL from University of Arizona, I got what they called an internship position at Michigan State. They had an intensive English program called the English. Well, I can't remember what it's called right now, but anyway, intensive English program still exists. And at the time that I went there, I was a full-time. It was basically like a full-time visiting instructor position, but they called it internship and paid you like $20,000. So it was very it was full-time, but it was they're getting you cheap. And I had a great. Actually, Annaline, hello. Just so funny that you're in South Africa, because my boss at the time was South African, and his name was Bob Vasson, and I have a lot of South Africans listening. So Bob Vasson was my boss. He was South African, and he really was student centered. And so he was the director of this program, and he was like, look, as instructors in this program, we need to deliver this program to really, really high standards. And the way that we're going to do this, one of the many ways, besides our excellence in teaching and our great curriculum, is that you are never going to be absent. So the idea that you would be absent, that you would get sick and not find a replacement for your class, was like a very taboo idea. It was like, you do not do that at Michigan State in the intensive English program under Bob Vasson's watch. So and we had to find our own substitutes. It was very, very discouraged. Like, we were very much discouraged from canceling. And that was like a formative teaching experience for me. It was the first time I was being paid as a non-student to teach at the college level. And so I took that really to heart. And I was like, I will never cancel class. No, I will go sick, and I will go, despite the fact that X, Y, and Z happened in my life, I'm showing up for class. I'm going to be there because I owe it to my students. And because that's really what Bob taught me. And then I go to my first tenure track job, my only tenure track job at the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. And I have children. And the first few years on the tenure track, I busted my butt to be in class every day. It didn't matter if I hadn't slept. It didn't matter if baby was sick. It didn't matter all these things. I had to be there. And then I started to realize, as I was, enacting this thing that was really, really hard for me as like a young mother, right? And new on the tenure track. It was very hard because I had a non-sleeping child, and, I was exhausted all the time and getting sick, and the kid goes to daycare and everybody gets sick. And I realized, wait a minute, it actually doesn't help anybody for me to drag my butt to class and sneeze on everybody, right? or give them whatever illness I have. It doesn't help anybody for me to take my baby with me if it means that I can't give class, And so I really had a change. I really had to change my thinking around this idea of if I don't show up for class, it means that I don't care about my students. And that was a mindset change. That was a scarcity, fear to self-confidence kind of mindset shift that I needed to make. And so I remember thinking oh, but I was taught this, what would Bob say? But then I realized too that I was blowing what Bob was doing out of proportion. Bob wouldn't want me to go to work and infect my students. Bob wouldn't want me to not take time off to take my child to the doctor if that's what needed to be done. Like, that's not what he meant. But your brain doesn't always like do the logical thing, right? And so like what you mean is like what it meant then and what it means now, can change. And so I really had to work on changing those things so that I could say like, no, I have the confidence in my career and my abilities and my students to like be able to say like, of course, I don't want to have people drive all the way to class and then not get class, but sometimes that's life, like sometimes that happens. So this is all to say that as we work through our careers and as we unveil, kind of peel the onion of academic culture back, we need to start to almost like reprogram ourselves from these racist patriarchal messages about how you're supposed to act as a person who has been socialized as a woman, how you're supposed to act. I will say like a person who has been socialized as a woman at any time, now, past, future, whenever. And though, because those messages are guiding decisions that are inspiring you to make the wrong choices in terms of what you put in your pipeline, how you say no, how you manage your time, how you honor your writing time. And so we need to move from that to a place of self-confidence, to belief in your voice, belief in your work, and belief in your worth. Belief in your worth. Okay, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That was the message that I wanted to bring today. The reason that I was inspired to talk about that was because of a post that happened over the weekend. That was one of our members posted that she had the opportunity to go to her aunt's house and create a writing retreat for herself. And she shared pictures of the beautiful place that she did that. And she said, I was so happy to really get to spend like concentrated time on my writing in this beautiful place. And most people wrote, wow, that's so great for you. Like, good job, good. But some people shamed her. They shamed her for doing that and for publicly showing that she did that. So I would just want to like say that creating a writing retreat experience for yourself is actually something that I've talked about in the podcast, that I've talked about on the blog, and that we talk about in our programs. And the reason that it's important is because when you like block time for writing and you say that I'm going to go somewhere, like I'm going to go someplace else, I'm going to clear the decks and really just let myself be immersed in writing for a certain amount of time. That is like disruptive behavior, because again, like these structures, this culture of academia wants you to like be on this treadmill that you can't keep the pace of. So when you do that, it's like this very empowering thing. When our group member came in and said that, she instead got shamed. And so like, I understand that people, like, I understand to some extent, showing a beautiful house and saying you could go there. It's like absolutely a privilege. Like so many, like being able to clear the decks and take time is a privilege. If you're a single mom, it's exponentially harder to do that than it is for someone with a partner or for someone with grown kids or for someone with no kids. Like, absolutely, absolutely. But shaming somebody who decides to put focus time into their writing, I think is not the kind of vibe that we want to create in this group. Because what that does is then that shows a bunch of other people who might have been inspired by that post or inspired by the podcast that explains how to create your own writing retreat, which, by the way, that podcast talks about. Whenever I talk about these things, I talk about if you have zero funds, this is what you do. If you have a little bit of money, here's what you could do. If you have more money, here's what you could do. Like, because like how I'm not in people's pockets, like whatever money you have is the money you have, and how you spend it is how you spend it. So I'm just giving like a variety of different types of possibilities for you. So I don't want other people to come into the group and feel like if they did something as bold as like self-worthy as taking time from their normal life, clearing the decks, and really like creating a writing retreat experience for themselves. I don't think that you should be ashamed of that. Just like if you go on a writing retreat that you pay money for, like and then you want to send a picture, you shouldn't be ashamed of that, and you shouldn't be shamed for it. So I just wanted to mention the group rules that I think that applies to, which is the first one, which is staying positive. And of course, we don't stay positive. This wasn't a very positive, like it's not positive without critique, but it is like we want the vibe to be inspiring and positive and like lifting up other people, not bringing other people down. And then also number 4, which is 0 tolerance for racism, hatred, and shaming. And so people who made those comments got kicked from the group. And just in case you're watching this, anybody, if you ever get kicked out of the group, it is for violating one of the rules. We don't have a mechanism through Facebook to like tell you which rule it was. But we are going to have our rules for the group actually on our website as well, imminently, so that you can always see them. And if something happens, the best way to communicate with the team is always through the writing@kathymazek.com email. That's in the group rules as well. So if people reach out to my team members or myself via Messenger, it's just not a good way to do it, because like I don't accept messages from people who I don't know. And so like that's just not the way to get your needs met. Going and sending an email to writing@kathymazek.com is the way to get your needs met. So there's that. So I wanted to just say that when we think like if we want to shame people around happiness that they're feeling, I think that this is not the place for that. And I think that quite the opposite. If you have a great experience and a great writing day or something that you did that really helped you, we should share that. Because that is what's going to inspire other people to take actions, not from places of fear, but from places of self-confidence and worth. Like your work is worthy. Your voice is worthy. It's worthy of the time you give it. It's worthy of investment that you make in it in terms of professional development or in terms of, going off somewhere and writing. It's worthy of that. And I want everybody to not just believe that somewhere inside, but actually be able to take action towards that. So I encourage everyone, like there's a lot of people in this group, go read the group rules so that you know the vibe we're trying to create, what we're trying to do. And I also want to give you a little sneak peek into what's coming up, which is that we are going to be doing a weekly live show inside the group on Tuesdays, which it is right now. We actually have been, playing with some names. One of them that we're kind of leaning towards is a Level Up Live, which is, talking about like, okay, how can you next level your career? How can you level up your writing practice? How can you, create, more time to write, better writing experiences, and a better relationship with your writing. And so it won't just be me blathering on as I've been doing for half an hour now. It is going to be, me and our coaches, Rocio and Gina, will be rotating through people. So you're going to get to hear different voices, see different faces, and really like what we're trying to do is we're trying to move up. We're trying to move to kind of like a little bit of a next level ourselves as a company, right? As a professional development company for women and non-binary people, or for anyone who has ever been socialized as a woman or whoever will be. So we want to showcase the diversity of field, the diversity of race, culture, ethnicity, and life experience that we have on our team. And so we have scientists, like Rocio comes from geosciences, and Gina comes from humanities, and I come from linguistics and social sciences. And so like we are trying to showcase like the different kinds of ways where our different experiences as coaches overlap, and share with you here in the free group some things that we've learned from coaching people inside of our programs. And Gina and Rocio are such top-notch coaches that I want you all to be able to benefit from, you know, interacting with them and not just hearing me all the time, but also hearing them and really showing more of how we are developing as a team. This year in our business, so in 2020, as wackadoo as 2020 has been, my word of the year for the company is team. And so we are working to get more team into the front-facing part of our business. And so we're really excited to be doing a live show for you inside this group every Tuesday. So sending you lots of love. And, you know, again, like if you're new to the group, go check out the group rules, check out the welcome video, and decide if this is the place for you. If you read any of the group rules and you're like, that doesn't sound right to me, then this isn't a great spot for you. And it's okay. There's no harm, no foul. So we're really trying to create something in this group that is anti the racist, patriarchal culture of academia. Because I think that that is what's really holding many people back from getting their voices out in a bigger way. And so we need to be having these conversations. So sending you lots of love. I'm just so happy to see so many people from all over the world joining our live video. If you watch the replay, go ahead and comment #team replay, and I will be seeing you around in the group. Bye.